Some people over 60 stop trusting stairs long before they actually become weak. And I think that catches a lot of people off guard because most assume balance problems only begin when the legs lose strength. But many times, what disappears first is automatic reaction. The body hesitates for a split second, stepping off a curb. A hand reaches for the railing before the brain even fully notices it. Movement starts feeling less natural, even when the muscles themselves still seem strong enough. In the last video here at MyoSci Lab, we talked about why that happens and how the nervous system slowly becomes less responsive when movement is too repetitive for too many years. And judging by the comments, many of you immediately recognized those small moments of hesitation in your own life. So today, instead of spending most of the video explaining the problem, I want to help you start retraining the system itself. Not with exhausting workouts, not with complicated routines, just a few movements that challenge balance in the way real life actually does. So before we begin, subscribe and stay with us here at MyoSci Lab if you want to keep rebuilding the kind of movement that truly carries into everyday life after 60. Now stand near a chair or wall, because the first movement usually reveals something people notice almost immediately. And this first movement is where many people realize balance is not just about staying upright. It's about how quickly the body recognizes instability and responds before you even consciously think about it. Place one foot directly in front of the other so the heel touches the toes, almost like you're standing on a tightrope. Keep a chair or wall nearby if you need support. Stand tall through your chest, relax your shoulders, and keep your eyes looking forward instead of down at your feet. Now hold that position for about 20 seconds. At first, it may not feel difficult at all. Then, the small corrections begin. Your ankles start adjusting. Your toes grip the floor harder. Tiny muscles around the feet and hips begin reacting automatically to keep you stable. And for many people, one side suddenly feels far less trustworthy than the other. That difference matters more than most people realize. Because balance is not just muscle strength, it's communication. Your brain is constantly interpreting signals coming from your feet, joints, eyes, and inner ear to understand where your body is in space. And over time, if those signals are rarely challenged, they often become slower and less coordinated. Now switch sides, and this time, pay attention to a mistake almost everyone makes the first time: trying to stop the shaking by stiffening the entire body. Don't do that. Let the small wobbling happen naturally. Those tiny corrections are exactly what trains the nervous system to become more responsive again. Also, avoid locking your knees. Keep a soft bend in them. Locked knees usually make the body more rigid and less reactive. And if you already notice your feet and ankles working harder than they do during normal walking, that's exactly the point. Most people misunderstand this. Feeling unstable during balance training is not always a sign something is wrong. Sometimes it's the first sign the body is finally being challenged enough to adapt again. And the next movement becomes even more revealing, because now we're going to train the kind of balance most people quietly lose first in everyday life: sideways stability. And this next movement is where many people discover that sideways balance is often the first thing that quietly starts disappearing with age. Because most people don't fall moving straight forward. They lose balance stepping sideways around furniture, turning too quickly in the kitchen, moving out of someone's way in a crowded store. Real life constantly forces the body to stabilize laterally, and walking alone usually doesn't train that very well. So stand tall with your feet about hip-width apart. Keep a chair nearby if needed. Now slowly step one foot out to the side, about shoulder width. Pause for 2 seconds, then bring the foot back underneath you with control. And go slower than feels natural. Slow movement exposes instability. Fast movement hides it. As you step sideways, try to keep your chest tall and your head level. One mistake many people make immediately is leaning their entire upper body over the stepping leg instead of controlling the movement through the hips. If your shoulders are swaying side to side, make the step slightly smaller. The goal is not a big step. The goal is controlled stability. Now repeat the movement to the other side, and notice something most people never pay attention to during normal walking. Does one leg feel slower catching your weight than the other? Does one hip feel less stable during the pause? That hesitation matters because the muscles around the hips play a huge role in helping the body recover balance during sideways movement. And when those muscles stop reacting quickly, people often begin moving more cautiously without consciously realizing it. Another mistake to avoid is rushing back too quickly after the side step. Pause and fully own the position before returning to center. That pause is where the nervous system actually learns control. And if this already feels more mentally demanding than regular exercise, that's not a bad sign. Balance training is not only muscular, it's neurological. Your brain is constantly recalculating posture, pressure, coordination, and timing in real time. And honestly, this is the point where many people begin realizing their body is still far more adaptable than they assumed. Because the final movement is where we start connecting balance back into real-world reactions again. And this final movement is where balance starts becoming less like an exercise and more like a real-world reaction again. Because in everyday life, balance rarely happens while standing perfectly still. It happens while reaching for something, turning unexpectedly, stepping around obstacles, carrying groceries while changing direction. The nervous system has to stabilize the body while movement is already happening. That's what this drill begins retraining. Stand beside your chair and shift your weight onto one leg. From there, lightly step the opposite foot forward at an angle. Reach one hand out in front of you as if you're placing something onto a shelf, then slowly return back to center. Now repeat the same thing diagonally to the side, then slightly behind you. Think of it almost like reaching toward different numbers on a clock. And keep the movement controlled. This is not about how far you can reach. It's about whether your body can recover balance smoothly afterward. One mistake many people make immediately is reaching too far and losing posture completely. If you feel yourself collapsing forward or grabbing tension through the shoulders, shorten the reach. Smaller and controlled is far more valuable than bigger and unstable. Another very common mistake is holding your breath without realizing it. Try to breathe normally during the reach. Breath holding usually makes the body stiffer and less responsive. And pay attention to what happens as you return to center. That moment is incredibly important because real balance is not just preventing instability, it's recovering from instability efficiently and confidently. For many people, one direction suddenly feels much less coordinated than the others. Forward may feel easy, while the diagonal reach feels awkward and delayed. That's completely normal. Real-world balance is directional, and the nervous system often loses confidence in certain movement patterns faster than others. But if the second or third attempt already feels slightly smoother, hold on to that feeling. That is adaptation happening in real time. And honestly, I think this is one of the biggest misunderstandings about aging. People assume confidence disappears because the body becomes fragile. But many times, confidence disappears first, and then the body starts moving more cautiously in response. This is why movements like these matter so much. They don't just train muscles, they retrain trust between the brain and body again. And honestly, I think this may be one of the most important things people can still improve after 60. Not just strength, but trust in how their body responds to movement. Because once hesitation quietly enters everyday movement, life often starts becoming smaller without people realizing it. They stop stepping over things confidently. They avoid sudden turns. They become more cautious walking on uneven ground, not always because they're physically weak, but because the nervous system no longer feels fully automatic and reliable. That's why consistency matters so much more than intensity with balance training. You do not need exhausting workouts. You do not need to train for hours. Just a few minutes spent challenging the body in meaningful ways can begin waking those systems back up again. Start with the heel-to-toe hold to rebuild awareness through the feet and ankles. Then practice the side step and pause to retrain lateral stability and control. Finish with the step reach recover drill to reconnect balance with real-world movement and reaction. And remember, smoother movement matters more than perfect movement. If your body already feels even slightly more coordinated than it did at the beginning of this video, that matters. That's progress your nervous system can build on over time. So stay with us here at MyoSci Lab if you want to keep rebuilding the kind of movement that helps everyday life feel steady, capable, and trustworthy again after 60. And before you leave, I'd genuinely love to know, which of these 3 movements felt the most challenging for you today?